The term United States, when used in a geographical sense, means any state, the District of Columbia, Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, Guam, American Samoa, North Mariana Islands, any possession of the United States. Well, they just listed all of the possessions, if you think about it. And any waters within the jurisdiction of the United States. Okay, well, actually, possession of the United States could be considered the Philippines, or Japan, or Afghanistan now, and maybe Iraq, and I'll bet you Kuwait even is a possession of the United States. Anyways, there is an American empire. The term state means any state of the United States, District of Columbia, Guam, American Samoa, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, Guam, American Samoa. Yeah, holy cow, how many times are they going to say that? Right. Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands, and any possession of the United States, right? Which means, Philippines, Japan. Okay, and did you know it's a felony to say you're a U.S. citizen when you know you're not? And so that's what they're getting you, because you tell them, well, I'm a U.S. citizen, and then they got you on a felony. So then they just violate your rights under the color of law because you just committed a felony. And whoever willfully represents himself to be a citizen of the United States shall be fined under this title and imprisoned not more than 3 years, or both. We can presume they know the law. Okay, there's court cases that talk about that. Either that or their supervisors perjured their oath. Okay, officers of the court have no immunity when violating a constitutional rights where they're deemed to know the law. They have no right to charge a fee for their justice, and I go into the courts all the time without paying filing fees, and this is the argument that I use. They have no right to do anything to us except by common law. No person shall be tried with right, liberty, or property without due process of law. That's in the Fifth Amendment. And then the phrase law of the land, see, they went and put that in the 14th Amendment, so then that's a trap, okay? Because if you don't, if you go and talk about the 14th Amendment, then you're a U.S. citizen. The phrase law of the land means common law. And remember, they went and had that in the Fifth Amendment without the due process of law, okay? Lord Coke, in his commentary upon this statute, says that these words, by the law of the land, mean by the due course and process of law. After which he afterwards explains to be by indictment and presentment of good and lawful men where such deeds are done in due manner and by writ original of the common law. So this phrase in the Fifth Amendment, by due process of law, is talking about that. That means the law of the land. That means by indictment, by a common law jury of your peers, not by some federal grand jury, because in that jurisdiction there's no common law. The law of the land in chapter 29 means common law, to be the statutes which would deprive a citizen of the rights of person or property without a regular trial according to the course and usage of common law would not be the law of the land. So then we have a capitis diminutio, and this is what they do, okay? And this is Roman law, and what they're using capitalization against you. You notice how they spell your name in all block capital letters. Well, it's not your name. Okay, that's a separate legal entity, and it's all a little card game they're playing. It's a shell game, but they're using this capitis diminutio, and they're hoping that you'll step up and be the surety for their fictitious entity. That is a cestacate trust, is what it is, and we'll see how this capitalization works. It is a diminishing or abridgment of personality or loss or curtailment of status of legal attributes and qualifications. The lowest or least comprehensive degree of loss of status, which is basically, if you see, it's upper and lower case, first name's capital, first letter of your name is capitalized. It happened upon the arrogation or pride of a person who had his own master, or upon the emancipation of one had been under patria potestas. So once a kid becomes the age of majority, then he gets capitalized, I guess, is how that works. You know, I'm capitis media, right? And it's first name upper and lower case, last name all capitalized. They do this in Canada all the time. A lesser or medium loss of status. This occurred where a man loses his right of citizenship without losing his liberty. It carried away your family rights. That's the reason that Child Protective Services can go and violate your rights all they want. Capitis diminutio maxima, they do this in the U.S. all the time. Highest and most comprehensive loss of status. This occurred when a man's condition was changed from one of freedom to one of bondage. When he became a slave, it swept away all the rights of citizenship and all family rights. You're a piece of property. We have no more right to decline the exercise of jurisdiction which is given than to usurp that which is not given. And one or the other would be treason to the Constitution. That's U.S. Supreme Court. Okay, so in other words, you give them jurisdiction, then they have to take it. You don't give them jurisdiction, then they can't take it. I've seen court cases that talk about they have to have the appearance of justice. We use the color of money to purchase color of justice and get color of title for our land and our vehicles and our other property. Do you really own everything? Anything? Everything is in fraud. And that's exactly what's going on. It's like Ford Motor Company. Ford Motor Company makes rules and regulations for their employees. Does that mean anything to you? Doesn't mean anything to me. What happens when you get involved with internal rules and regulations of Ford Motor Company? Are you a person? Okay? A person is a variety of entities other than human beings. A person is a foreigner, not a citizen. You know, this is the courts. And this is the stuff I bring up all the time, and you just watch them scatter. In common usage, the term person does not include the sovereign, and statutes employing the word are normally construed to exclude it. A sovereign is not a person in a legal sense. Sovereign is not a person as far as the statute's concerned. Sovereigns have the right to travel on the public highway with their private property and are not subject to regulation in any way. Sovereigns have unimpaired access to the first 8 amendments to the Constitution. Sovereigns, subjects do not have access to the first 8 amendments except what Congress might grant, or the state. The term motor vehicle, this is in Title 18, United States Code, Section 31. This is further proof. They know. They know. The term motor vehicle means every description or carriage or contrivance propelled or drawn by mechanical power and used for commercial purposes in the highways in the transportation of passengers and property, or property and cargo. Okay, so if you're involved in commerce, then you have a motor vehicle. If you're not, then you don't. And it even defines what commercial purposes is. In doing this, I shall have occasion incidentally to evince how true it is that states and governments were made for man, and at the same time how his creatures and servants are first deceived, next vilified, and at last oppressed their master and maker. Let a state be considered as subordinate to the people, and let everything else be subordinate to the state. How true it is. In order for a member of the sovereignty to become subject to regulation in any way, you have to agree to it. And as with any contract, it has to be knowing, willing, and intentional, and they will never, ever intentionally get you into something like that, because that would be treason. So you just bring that stuff up and they'll just dive for cover. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Anytime you get anything from the government, it's an implied contract and brings you into their jurisdiction. Anytime you register for anything or make application for anything from the government, you're giving them power of attorney to make legal determinations for you and represent you. You're making them competent in your affairs. You're telling them you're a person. You're converting yourself into a slave. All statutes are written very carefully, and most do not apply to members of the sovereignty. 99% of the time, the government is technically correct. It's not up to the government to tell you you're a member of the sovereignty. The government lawyers have made up a statute that properly applies to those entities they have jurisdiction over. The burden is on us to assert our sovereignty. Do you know who you are? If the member of the sovereignty gets unknowingly involved in something that operates as a contract by which he might lose his sovereignty, he's made a mistake of law and fact. The courts have ruled that it's not, the government is not the protector of the Constitution. If the government is not the protector of the Constitution, then who is? It's we the people who are supposed to be protecting the Constitution. And how do we protect the Constitution? We protect the Constitution by challenging what the government does through the courts and administratively. And I can't tell you how many people I've had removed by following the procedure that I do. I build a case against them, and the next thing you know, they're like, I don't know what they're doing, but they're gone. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of them were in jail. The burden is on the sovereigns to know and understand the law and assert their sovereignty. Do you know who you are? All contracts must be entered into knowingly, willingly, and intentionally. None of the contracts entered into with the government by which you might lose your sovereignty are willing, intentional, or knowing. They can't be. Okay? Because if they did, the government's involved in treason. And they won't. They won't. I'm telling you, we actually do have a pretty good government. The sovereignty of the people is unalienable and imprescriptible. That means it cannot be alienated. In order to regain your sovereignty, you must assert it. You have to correct the record. You have become involved in laws that don't apply to you, and the courts view it to be a contract. All you got to do is bring it up, and you just watch them scatter. When you assert your sovereignty in this way, you build a case with evidence that you can use in court at a future date should you need to do so. Send all documents. I send all documents by registered mail. That's the only way to do it. It's kept under lock and key, and there's a chain of custody. Government attorneys may turn it over to a bureaucrat who may also respond to a point. If the government was to admit you're right, they would be admitting to treason, extortion, genocide, and another indictable offense. So if they're smart, they won't respond at all. You have to be self-reliant. You cannot only talk the talk, you got to walk the walk. You got to be knowledgeable about the law and how it works, and you have to be prepared to go to court. And you got to make it known in certain terms that you're prepared to do that. And you have to stay away from words.